What's up, everybody? Hope you're doing well today. I thought I would do a video on Venus flytraps today and talk about dispelling the myths around these enigmatic plants. Now, probably more so than any other plant, but I can say confidently more so than any other carnivorous plant, Venus flytraps have the most false claims around them, or get the worst kind of PR, if you will. And so I thought I'd take a moment to clear the air on that. So getting right into it, myth number one, and this is going to be sort of the thing that starts at all of it, is that Venus flytraps are hard to grow. That is not anywhere close to being true. All these plants you see in front of me were, other than a few of them, were rescue plants, not even 6 months ago. When I say rescue, I mean we're literally down to the rhizome, maybe had a couple of leaves on them, and for all intents and purposes we're completely out. And so just by planting them in the proper soil and the care I've made videos on, they are now where you see them 6 months later. Probably not even 6 months later. I got them at the beginning of, probably 3 or 4 months later. So, and I've done nothing. I planted them in here. I leave them in here. I make sure they have water, but basically nature does the rest. And yeah, and so it's very hard to find plants that you could just leave like that. So very, very easy to care for as long as you give them the care that they need. And we've talked through that, like I said, on other videos as far as the proper care. Myth number two is that they don't need dormancy. Now, imagine you are, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 years old, and you've gone your whole life getting 8 hours of sleep. And then somebody comes along and says, you know what, you don't need that sleep. That is just something that you do and because you had to, but you don't really need it. And so you might do well for a little bit, but pretty soon you're going to start to fade away. And so that's the same thing with these plants. These plants have been evolving for millions of years, and so they have come through that time frame to rely on dormancy through all that time to be able to give them a rest period and to give them that sleep that they need. And so you can get away with the first year or two of no dormancy, and just like with your sleep, you can get away with just a little bit of no sleep, but pretty quickly you're going to start to fade, and these plants are going to do the same thing. Myth number three is that you can feed these plants people food, and unfortunately I see that a lot on people's comments, like, hey, feed it hamburger meat, feed it, I've even seen jelly beans and stuff, it'll help with growth because of the glucose and all of these things. Again, these plants have developed with the aid of chitinase the ability to break down the chitin exoskeleton of insects, and so they're relying on live insects to provide them the nutrition that they need, or excuse me, the energy that they need through that nitrogen. And so they have not developed, nor do they want, any people food. If you give them hamburger meat or any kind of chicken or any kind of people food, not only will you kill the trap that you've placed it in, but more often than not, you will end up killing the plant. And as far as growth, with using jelly bean hack, it might produce a little bit of glucose, but I would not recommend doing that, as it will, again, they did not develop to eat jelly beans. Another myth that goes along with the last one I just said is that these plants are tropical. They are not tropical, and they are not going to want tropical conditions. These plants are intermediate, and they want those intermediate conditions. And what do I mean by that? They want very, very bright light. A lot of tropical plants grow in the understory of plants, and Venus flytraps can handle a little dappled light, but for the most part they want very bright, direct sunlight, upwards of 14 to 16 hours of it, as a matter of fact. And they are going to want it hot, and they are again going to want those cool that cool period for dormant season. So humidity, always important to every plant. However, not as important to Venus flytraps as a lot of people think that it is. You want to make sure that you give them intermediate conditions as you would any other intermediate plant. All right, and so another myth that I want to talk about is that Venus flytraps can eat non-live dead insects. And so so this one's a little bit of a quasi myth, right? You can obviously feed them dead insects, but they're not going to close all the way. So like what I have here is an example of one that is completely sealed. See how it's got a complete seal on it? That's when it starts producing the enzymes for carnivory. If you feed it dead insects, it won't continue to wiggle around and trigger those hairs that will help the trap close to a tight seal and to begin to produce the enzymes necessary to utilize and break down that food. Now, there are the potentiality, of course, that if you feed it a dead insect, it will seal up depending on how that you've put it in there. And I've seen people who sort of massage the outside of the trap trying to artificially trigger those hairs. But for the most part, you're going to want it to feed it live insects. If you have them outdoors, they'll eat plenty on their own. But if you grow them indoors, you're going to want to give them, you can go to pet stores and get them like live mealy bugs. All right, so the final myth that I'm going to talk about in this video is, again, another quasi myth, and that is Venus flytraps have to be fed in order to survive. The reason why I'm going to call this a quasi myth is, yes, they are going to need food and capture food so they can have so they can get that fertilizer, right? Just like any other plant. They may or may not, I mean, the potential is they'll probably still survive, but they just won't do as well. However, here's the big caveat that a lot of people miss. The thing that keeps a Venus flytrap strong and growing is just like all other plants, photosynthesis. They need the light. And in these particular cases I talked about earlier, they want a lot of it. And think about it from a logical standpoint. There is not a whole lot of surface area on these leaves. And so they're going to need a ton of light in order to be able to get the amount that they need to be able to create the energy, whether it's through sugars for the nectar or for the energy to be able to close the traps. And so they are going to want a lot of that light. So don't feel like you have to feed every single trap all the time. Certainly it's good to give them that fertilizer, that energy to get bigger and stronger and healthier, but it's more about sunlight than it is about food. If they're capturing food, great. If you want to feed them, perfect, please do so. I'm not suggesting not to feed them, but a lot of people will tend to overfeed them. They feel like, well, they got to fill up every single trap every single time, and that's certainly not the case. Think about it as if you were growing a plant and you decided to apply some sort of topical fertilizer. You're not going to want to drench that plant in fertilizer all the time, or else you're going to run the risk of giving it too much nutrients, whether it be, in this case, nitrogen, or whatever you're giving your plant. So I hope this video has helped. I hope it's helped clear up a lot of misnomers and misconceptions about these amazing, beautiful plants. The number one thing, again, was the very first myth. They are not hard to grow. If you give them the care that they need, they will do just fine for you, and they will thrive for you. Again, the majority that you see here, other than the ones that have tags, were all rescues that were just about on death's door, and just in a few short months have come back, and by next year they will be full and beautiful. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.